From the center of the universe, now in its 7th season covering your 19-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the Xs and Argos Podcast with Argos color analyst Ben Grant and Coach JB.
Welcome to the Xs and Argos Podcast bi-week edition, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. My name's Ben Grant, joined as always by JB, and we're here to take you through the first of Toronto Argonauts' 3 bye weeks. Only 3 games of action this week, as they've got 3 teams on the bye, Toronto being one of them. This is their first bye of the season, as I said. We want to go through positional groups, how the Argos have looked so far positionally, what help may be on the way, where they can improve, maybe signs of trouble going forward too. We also want to get into some burning questions, things that need to be answered over these next few weeks before the Argos hit their second bye of the season. And then we will get into our first power rankings of the season. We've had a chance to see all 9 teams up close now, and we'll give you what we think is our 9 through 1 breakdown of our power rankings. Plus, we've got a couple of our usual segments, Put Me Down for 20 and a Challenge Flag. All that and more is coming up on this episode of the Xs and Argos Podcast. JB, the weather's nice, it's sunny outside. There is no better place to go than Something in the Water Brewing, whether it's for lunch, whether it's after work, whether it's before an Argos game, and that's the perfect time, or after an Argos practice, because it's only steps from Lamport Stadium where the Argos practice, and it's only steps from BMO Field where they play. You want to get involved in some tailgating, head on down to Something in the Water Brewing before their next home game. There's always lots of Argos fans there. You can usually catch JB and I at Something in the Water Brewing and catch up with us and talk a little Argos football. There's never a shortage of Argos fans there. So make sure you stop by Something in the Water Brewing and try Longboat Pale Ale, the beer that was made for fans of the Double Blue, made for you. All right, JB, let's get into it. Let's do this positional group report card. I guess before we start off, and we'll kind of go through each positional group, offense first, then through with defense. But was there, when you're thinking about this exercise as a whole, is there anything that stood out to you as we're sort of preparing this segment?
The grades are certainly much lower than they have been in recent memory. That definitely stood out. When you start breaking down team statistics, too often Toronto is between Edmonton and Ottawa on the list, and those are not ideal neighbors on statistical lists.
No, it does look different from years past, but I think the asterisk that we'll put next to that is that, as we've discussed all season long, a lot of these groups are going to change because reinforcements are on the way. And I think we're going to start seeing that the first game out of the bye, that game at Montreal, potentially the first game back for Chad Kelly, potentially the first game back for Wyndham McManus in a long time. And there's a bunch of other important players, running backs, for example, who they just started. Kalen LeBourne, who was signed like the day before in the most recent game, actually played well. So played really well, in fact. So that's maybe that one doesn't deserve an asterisk. But these reinforcements are coming, but it's a nervous time for Toronto Argonauts fans, and I see it a lot on social media. A lot of hand-wringing, a lot of stressing out about the Argos play. I still believe that everything is going to be fine. I would say, Argos fans, it's okay. This is sort of the start we kind of thought they would probably go through without, and that was just without Chad Kelly. That wasn't even knowing that there were all these other high-profile, high-impact players on the Argos that were going to go down with injury. And so, that being the case, yeah, it's 1-4 is not a good record. There's no defending that. But it's a little different. It's a little misleading. Now, if they start getting these guys back and things don't change, well, now there is a serious concern. JB, I think maybe one more thing before we start positional groups is that stood out to me. Not so much like how much lower grades are, although that was noticeable. I think how few automatic all-stars there have been in this group, because that's something Toronto has been very blessed with since Ryan Dinwiddie arrived in Toronto. It seems like every year at this time, there's a handful of automatic all-stars and then a bunch of guys that are sort of on the fringe. Remember, this is a team that has been putting out more all-star players than just about everybody else. And at this point in the season, I don't know that there's any guaranteed all-stars. I would make an argument for Peter Nicastro. I think you could make an argument for Derek Sluka, although you're going to have a lot of Katsantonis people fighting with you on that. And I think rightfully so. I think you can make an argument for Kosi, but there's so many good receivers around the league. I think you can make an argument for Chatfield, but I think there's also a group of people that will tell you that, sacks aside, there's a lot of great defensive end play too. So I think overall, this is just an unfamiliar position for Argos fans to be in. But like I've said off the top, things will be getting better. Reinforcements are arriving. Let's get into it, JB. Let's start off with the QB position. What has your assessment been of Nick Arbuckle through the first 5 games?
Well, look, if I'm going to give him a grade, I'm going to give him a B. And I'm marking a little bit on a curve because he is the backup, not the starter. So, expectations are a little bit adjusted. I think from a backup point of view, the Argos have to be really happy with what he's given them. I mean, he leads the league in yards, which is amazing. He's thrown 7 touchdowns. He has, presided over a pretty productive offense in terms of passing offense without having any running game at all. You have to really take your hat off. I think he loses a little bit because he does have 7 interceptions, and that's not ideal. But I think from a quarterback point of view, it has not been the problem for the Argos.
I would agree with your assessment that he has not been the problem. I think he has been a problem at times, but I think overall he has achieved better than you would expect for a backup quarterback. I understand you're sort of grade curving a little bit there, being a backup quarterback. The one thing I would say is that you mentioned at the end, that turnover number of 7, that concerns me because in my mind, when you're a backup quarterback on really any CFL team, I think your number one job is not to cost you. Like unless you are swinging for the fences, which that's not Arbuckle's style. He's out there trying to play disciplined game control football. So unless you're swinging for the fences and taking chances, and I think that's an acceptable style of playing backup quarterback too. If you've got that sort of skill set, you're a gunslinger. You just want to throw the ball 50 times and see what happens. And maybe the reason you're a backup is that you make some poor decisions. That's not Nick Arbuckle. And so the turnover numbers concern me. To have an interception in every single game this year, 2 interceptions in 2 of those games. They don't all go against him, like that one that Robert Priester had in Ottawa. There's no way you can blame Arbuckle for that. It was just one of those weird things. Those things happen, but there have been some costly turnovers. And so for a team that's trying to play safe at the QB position, I do think that's concerning. And then the other area that I will give Arbuckle a bit of heat for is another positional group that we're going to get to next, the offensive line. The offensive line play has not been good. I think they've probably been the weakest positional group for Toronto, which is so weird because I think we thought coming in we'd be a position of strength, if not the strongest positional group to this point in the season, and they haven't been. They've been poor. But I think a lot of that falls on Nick Arbuckle because of the fact that there's no fear of him escaping the pocket and making big plays downfield. They will let him escape the pocket. And that makes life very tough, especially for your tackles, but really everybody across the board on the offensive line. So I think his play his stats have been good. But I think there are a few things you have to look out for when you're looking at his play that involve some of those other participants.
I'll throw in too, because I think I was pretty tough on Arbuckle, to pump his tires a little. He has at 70% completion percentage, and he has in fact had a lot of 30+ completions. So I agree. I agree with you. The turnovers are deadly, especially as a backup. really you're trying to be much more conservative there. But honestly, he's getting the highest grade of anybody I'm giving, so I can't be too hard on him. He's the class he is the class valedictorian at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if I think running backs might give you an argument, even though the running stats have been brutal. I think that the running back play, they've had great pass protection. I think they've been great receivers as a group. I think there's something there, but I think I'd have a hard time grading running backs higher than Nick Arbuckle. I think other positional groups, I think the D-line has an argument, but they've also, there's so many guys we're talking about there. We're grading 9, 10 guys that have been through the rotation.
It's not a scientific process.
No, so it is tough. But yeah, I think Nick Arbuckle, for a backup quarterback playing 5 games, you do not usually get the level of play that he's given the Toronto Argonauts. So I think that's a fair assessment. So let's move on to that offensive line group, JB. How do you see this? Because this is the one positional group that I do grade weekly. I grade them and I grade running back pass protection every week. And so for this group, I actually have numbers that make sense to me and I know what to do with. And what I would say overall is you're getting very good play from Peter Nicastro, and everywhere else is a little hit and miss. And the tackle play in particular, whether it's George Moore or Ryan Hunter, or for that one game, Hampton and Ergel, it hasn't been good. But there's a little bit of an explanation that I gave you in that last segment with Arbuckle. I'll expand on that in a minute. But what was your overall assessment of this offensive line?
Well, I think there's kind of a mix of what I see when I watch, and then what is there in hard numbers in terms of team statistics. And as you mentioned, look, offensive line, defensive line, we're kind of grouping them together, which is, not terribly fair for individuals, but that's how she goes, as they say. Offensive line play has not been terrible. I mean, I think anybody who's watched the games, Arbuckle is not running for his life. The Montreal game was not great, but every game since then, have been pretty good. I think Arbuckle has 11 30-plus completions. I think being able to let a play develop that long speaks to good pass protection. And the eye test, I think they passed, but statistically, they are last in sacks given up, and they are obviously we're unable to rush at all. And some of that has to lie at the feet of the offensive line. Not all of it. We're also 8th in offensive penalties, the majority of which would be offensive line. So that has to get cleaned up for sure. But they're also 4th in first downs, which is, suggests, again, a unit which is capable of protecting and moving the ball. So I think there are positives and negatives, but on the whole, I had to give them a C. Just too many sacks and no ability to run the ball, and too many penalties. I think all of that adds up to a unit that has lots of room for improvement.
There's no question that this group can improve, and I do think I would probably have them as my lowest graded group myself, but I think it's not all on them. Like I said in the last bit with Arbuckle, let me explain that a little bit. So as tackles in particular, because you look at the pressures given up and the sacks given up, a lot of the time you're looking at the tackle position, and the reason why teams have been able to sort of feast on George Moore in particular, but also Ryan Hunter, which we didn't see at all last year. His play was great at tackle last season. And so you say, well, what's the difference? Is it because he flipped to the right side? I really don't think so. I think if he were playing left tackle, it would be pretty similar to what you're getting from him playing right tackle. I don't see any sort of awkwardness in his movement. He looks the same. He's very fluid. The thing is, teams playing against Nick Arbuckle will use both gaps very liberally. And what I mean by that is when you're playing tackle, you're kind of out on an island. It's you against the defensive end most of the time. Sometimes we have twists and stunts and stuff, but I'm just talking about those one-on-one situations. Almost always, the defensive end is going to take an outside path because they have contain responsibility. And in the CFL, we've seen, like, Argos fans, you know this, like, what happens when opposing quarterbacks escape the pocket. It's not good, right? There's big play potential downfield. Most CFL quarterbacks are athletic. They can run for first downs. They can really threaten you that way. But it's really more the now being able to change the launch point, get outside the pocket, and surprise the DBs with a big play downfield. Like, it's so dangerous. And that is why you don't allow your DNs to break contain. What you see from opposing DNs when they play the Argonauts is they don't really care that much. They will use that inside move just as much as they'll move outside. Even when they have contain, they'll still attack in that B gap between the tackle and the guard because they're not afraid of Nick Arbuckle rolling outside. And he has scrambled a little bit for first downs, but it's not killing teams. And his big plays haven't necessarily come from him rolling out to the right and escaping the pocket. If any of his big plays have come from like broken plays, it's been from stepping up through the middle, from sort of stepping up through the mess. And that's more a product of interior rush, not rush from the DN. So I think that on its own is really hurting Toronto's tackles. But I think the guard play has been affected to a degree as well. But with guards, you can help out. Nicastro's playing well. He can help double team where it needs to be. But I think the guard play has been okay. Tackle play has been weak, and I think that is largely why. And then we'll add to it something that you've been talking about for weeks now, JB. It's that because they don't really fear the run game. It's not really something they're too worried about. That also impacts the pass rush, because if they decide, hey, you know what, I'm going after it on this snap, and it is a run, it hasn't been something that's been killing opposing defenses. So that's an area that the Argos do need to get better in. But it comes with a fear of better quarterback strike ability, big play ability. And so that is something I think will change a little bit when Chad Kelly comes back. All right, let's move on to the running back position, JB. This was a tough one to grade because we're sort of talking about four guys here. You had Deontay McMahon, who was pretty limited in his action so far. Mayan Williams was limited to start the season and then had this really big game, was used a lot, then he got injured. And then you had Kevin Brown kind of take over the last couple of games as the starter, and then the emergence of Kalen LeBourne in the last game. How do you assess this positional group? What did they look like to you? I know the run numbers are terrible, but how did these guys look?
I think exactly as you say, it might be a bit of a cop-out here, but I had to give them an incomplete. Just because, with Williams hurt and McMahon hurt, and Brown being sort of forced into action, I don't think there's enough data to give them a grade. Although obviously the grade would be low. But I think incomplete is here because we just can't tell until they have a running back who plays, whether it's the new kid or Williams or McMahon when he comes back. If we can have like 3 games in a row of that running back, and then we can really take a look at what is working and what is not. But right now, it's just triage back there. It's just who do we have, and let's try and do it. And they're not really trying to run very much. And I would guess that they're probably not working on it much at practice because they've sort of punted it until they can get some stability. So the running game has been very poor. I sort of put that grade on the offensive line, and I gave the running backs a bit of a pass just because there just isn't enough any individual data on anybody to grade it.
What I can tell you just from my offensive line grading is that running backs are getting hit before they get to the line of scrimmage. Most of the time when there's an Argos run play, someone is getting hit in the backfield. And so that makes it very tough, no matter who you are as a running back. And I would say I don't have any concerns. I know a lot was made. It's kind of gone away now because Gideon Carey is on a practice roster. It has been for several weeks now. And any team in the league could, in theory, sign him, and no one has. And that's, I think, speaks to that wasn't really the issue here. And I don't feel it is. I think the guys in the room are fine. I'm not really worried about that. I think, if anything, they've made some discoveries. So remember, Kevin Brown and Kalen LeBourne were both signed as free agents. Like, they were just sitting out there. They weren't on any team and really on anyone's radar. Kevin Brown's been okay. I thought Kalen LeBourne in his one game looked really good. I was impressed with him. His pass pro was okay, but it was his explosiveness that was exciting. And that's something that I haven't seen to the same degree from Mayan Williams, who I think has everything else. But that big playability from LeBourne, when you see him get up to speed, just even that little swing pass he took last week where he turned it up, it just looks so innocent. And he got like 12 yards out of it because he turned on the Jets. Suddenly he was on the sideline and they were having to push him out of bounds. And I think the discovery or rediscovery of Kalen LeBourne is exciting potentially, because I think a backfield that has McMahon and Williams is a very strong backfield. And if you know you've got LeBourne, and a guy that I kind of think they might keep around on the practice roster if they don't dress 3 running backs, and I don't think they will. When both those guys are healthy, I think LeBourne ends up on the practice roster. I think I could see Kevin Brown being released. If one of those two guys is released, I think they would keep LeBourne and release Brown. That would be my guess. And yeah, that backfield I think is perfectly fine. Mayan Williams, just to give you an indication of how impressed I've been with his pass protection, it's a small sample size. I have never had a running back end a season with as high a grade as I currently have on Williams for pass pro. So that is, and to me, that is the most important thing a professional running back can do, especially in the CFL, but I think all football, is your pass protection ability. He's really good at it. And so that I find very exciting. And we also know both he, McMahon, LeBourne, they're good receivers. They can catch the ball well out of the backfield. And I think when Chad Kelly returns, you're going to see their play elevate. Suddenly, Mayan Williams is going to look like a 1,000-yard rusher. He's not going to get there, probably because of the start to the season so far, but he will look that sort of caliber. All right, let's move on to the wide receivers. Do you have a grade on these guys, JB?
I do. I gave the wide receivers a B plus. I think that they have been really good. Like, I think as a unit, they are the best unit on the team. I think that obviously Coxie has played fantastic and is right at the top of yards for the league. Matal has turned into a star, and he is also in the top 10 in touchdowns and yards. Tavares has been quiet, but still, pretty good. And so, I think there's some potential there. So part of that is built into the grade. Unger, same deal. I think as a unit, it's not a unit without its flaws. But I think if you look at Unger and Bissett and, Bissett and Matal and Coxie and Daniels, that was what we were excited about in the offseason, working with Kelly. And I think that they've been very good. They have not been dropping balls. Their completion rate, the target to completion rate, has been very high. They've made some spectacular catches. I think that they have been the best unit of the Argos in the first 5 weeks.
And it's a good thing, because this is a group that doesn't have anyone coming back, right? There aren't reinforcements coming back for this group. Every other group we've talked about, like Arbuckle's got Chad Kelly coming back. The O-line, you've got Giffen and Sirocco potentially coming back. Running backs, Williams and all the running backs. But this receiving group, this is what it is, and they look good. And even when they don't look good, no one looked bad. I don't think any receiver has had a terrible game.
No, like they're deep. I think, I'm not going to grade them on what they're not. Like, there are things I'd love to add to that room, but they have been everything you could ask for from their group. I think they've really helped Arbuckle, making tough catches, and it's been what kept them in games. So I think full credit to the wide receiver group. I'm really excited to see what they can do with Kelly back there, and if Kelly can come back, this is a team that should be able to put up over 30 every game. Yeah,
I would say improvement at quarterback is equivalent to a whole letter grade change potentially. So if you're putting up great numbers and you look great out there, like, again, I can't say enough good stuff about Matal. And, Coxie, we kind of expect this from him. He's, that's his level. But Matal as this emerging star, like we've seen, is really exciting. Now you add Shag Kelly to that, who gets them the ball a split second quicker. Now everyone's got a bit more time to make moves. The ball's a bit more accurate, so it gets people in stride. This is a positional group that could go off in the next phase of this season. So I'm pretty excited about them.
Yeah, they've been really good.
Let's switch over to the defense, JB. Let's start with the defensive line. This was so tough because there's so many guys. Like when I was looking through this, it took me forever because the rotations and going through snap numbers and stuff like that. How do you see this positional group as a whole? I think maybe before we get to that, I think not nearly the concern that we thought there were going to be coming into this season, but that doesn't mean there aren't areas to improve, certainly.
Yeah, I think I gave them I gave them a C plus. I think I'm not a huge proponent of sacks as a metric, but people do love them, and they are counted, and certainly they matter a lot in contracts, and they have been able to rack up sacks. So that has been good. I think that, again, it becomes a question of well, is it defensive line? Is it linebacker? The team is 8th in tackles for losses. So some of that is on the defensive line. We are last. The Argos are last in stopping opponents' first downs. Which I think is some of that has to fall on the defensive line. We're second last in defending the run. So there are issues. I mean, for sure, when you watch that last game, when you combine numbers and eye test, there were some issues in that Hamilton game with the line getting blown up on some of those running plays. And then there were other plays where the line held their own. But on the whole, the defensive line has not been strength. And I think we knew going in that was going to be an issue. It certainly is a brand new unit. So I think that they have been able to show some good quarterback pressure, and full credit to that. But I do have to ding them for the run. They have not been able to stop the run.
Yeah, that has been a concern. I care less about that as something that a defensive line does. It's important. It's come up a few times, and it has been a deciding factor, I think, in a couple of games. But I think generally over the long haul of a season, as long as you're not just getting absolutely shredded, I don't care too much about run defense.
I mean, we're not. I mean, there isn't anywhere below 9th.
No, I know that, but
I can say they're 11th.
That doesn't really bother me though. I think I would rather see. I think there's still areas of concern. I want to see more. I want to see different guys pressure the quarterback. Andrew Chatfield's been great at it. He's been in the backfield a lot. I think he's been a very nice discovery. He wasn't in the plans. Remember that this was a positional group I was worried about when it was basically 3 or 4 totally different guys. I thought the way this D line was going to be starting, you'd have Cox on one end. Of course, he's out with injury. Paris on the other end, he's missed most of the games with injury. Christmas in the inside, who looked really good until he got hurt. His first 2 games were fantastic, and then he got hurt. And so it's guys that I wasn't even thinking about who are the primary contributors here. And Chatfield, I think, has been a real bright spot. I think he would be in the conversation right now as an East All-Star. I don't know if he would get it, but I think he's being talked about. And this wasn't a name on anyone's radar at all. And so that's a nice discovery here. And so as this group starts getting healthy, as you get Parrish back on the other side, I think that is going to certainly help. I don't know that any support is coming in terms of run stopping. We thought Jamin Pelly's signing might do it. His play has been fine, but I think he needs to get better still if he's going to single-handedly try to turn this run defense around. And I'm not sure I've seen enough from him to think that's coming, but he's still only a couple of weeks in. He's still getting reps. He's still getting probably into football shape, I'd imagine, too. So there is upside in Pelly's game. I think maybe an area of concern we haven't talked about with this D-line is, where are the Canadians? We haven't had good play or really even reps from Tyson Hergut and Jeremiah Ojo. the first round draft pick. I thought we would see more of them in the rotation, especially given the injuries that we've seen, and we really haven't. Like Ojo's barely got any snaps. Tyson Hergot, same thing, and when he has, I don't think he's particularly played that well. So that is a little bit of a concern for me. I want to know. I want to see more of these guys. Now they're great special teams players. They've been contributing that way on the D-line, but I had hoped when both of these guys were drafted, especially Ojo, that they would be difference makers on the defense as well as on special teams. So that worries me a little bit. But overall, I'm not too concerned about this positional group, especially with Parrish coming back. I think Anthony Lanier has been a real bright spot. I think he's been one of the best defensive linemen. I think they've had good play from Haba too in sort of very limited snaps in rotation. I think he's had some snaps where he looked really good too. So they have contributors. I'm not concerned about this positional group, but they can still get better, and I expect them to as they get healthier. All right, JB, linebackers. Let's include. Do you want to include Sam in our linebackers, or do you want to leave that to DBs?
Sure.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I didn't get that granular. I mean, again, it's it's hard. There aren't a lot of linebacker specific statistics, in terms of separation. I think the Argos defense is last or almost last in almost every metric. So I think on the whole, every defensive group is going to get a low grade. I had the linebackers at C. I thought Cam Judge has flashed. He played a really great game 2 weeks ago. He has definitely been a really good signing. And the linebackers have flashed, but on the whole, they have to carry some of this weight on the defense being, largely the second worst in the league in almost every category. They are not getting tackles for losses. They're not being able to stop the rush at all. And, they're not getting, they are getting fumbles, which is great. If I give that to the linebackers, and the defensive line kind of mixed, they are forcing fumbles, which I think has been good. But, I think in the end, if you're looking at the linebacker play, you have to put the run game on them. I mean, I think, not to be too simplistic, but at the end of the day, defensive backs have to carry the pass and linebackers have to carry the run. And, I know it's all interconnected, because when the defensive line's getting blown up, it's almost impossible for a linebacker to make a play. So it's all interconnected. So they don't get the little bump from the sacks that the defensive line got. So I have to give them a C for what we've seen so far.
I think the way to look at this very positively is that Wyndham McManus is going to come back, but yep, there's a drop. Like he's among the best defensive players in the league. I don't think there's any question about that. And even though he was hurt, he was hurt to start the season. Remember, he missed time in preseason with that knee injury. Started the season not fully healthy. Had to come out of the Montreal game. Came out again in game 2. I don't know that anyone even has played as well as injured Wyndham McManus. And he doesn't look like his normal self, but he's so far removed from everybody else on this defense. He is a defensive star. He is a guy that should always be an all-star. And I think getting him back is going to be massive, because if you're Cameron Judge, who I think, plays at a similar level when he's got a guy next to him like Wyndham McManus, those two together, I think should be an awesome pairing. But there's the drop-off when McManus isn't there. And I don't want to knock D'Arcangelo. I actually think he's played very well. I think D'Arcangelo has filled in nicely. I think we've got a really nice surprise, too, from Aaron Casey, the former Cincinnati Bengal. He hasn't played a lot, but his, we talk about run D, his run defense has been good. They've lined him up a lot, almost more as a D lineman than they have as a linebacker. But he's dropped back into coverage and looked really good. He has a lot of positional awareness for a guy that just got here and is so new to the CFL. I think there's a very, very good upside to Aaron Casey's game. So let's not forget about him. But I think right now we're mostly talking about D'Arcangelo and Judge. And, I think their play has been good. I think they've been tasked with a lot of responsibilities. And I think that makes it tough on it. Like, how many times have we commented on the fact that Cameron Judge and Isaac Darkangelo are everywhere? They're the guys chasing down ball carriers like 50 yards downfield. They're the guys making the tackle on the sideline, and they're the guys that are holding down the middle too. So I think they're having to do more than they will have to do when this defense starts gelling a little bit and when they start getting some of these pieces back. So I don't want to be too hard on either of those guys, and I do think there's some potential there in Aaron Casey. The Sam spot is interesting because I think we got used to really good Sam linebacker play. Quincy Mosier played that position so well last year, and clearly the coaching staff felt he was missing a little something this year. They started with Rutledge. He got injured, came out. They went with Kenneth George, who got injured and came out. Jarrett Martin went in. It's the play from that position has been fine, but it hasn't been scary. It hasn't been a difference-making spot. And I would like to see Rutledge get another shot, because I thought his game against Montreal, I thought was going pretty well until his injury. I thought he played all right, and I just want to see more of that. No one else, even Kenneth George, like no one else showed me more than what I felt like I was getting out of Rutledge. So I wouldn't mind him getting another crack at this position after the bye. But I can't argue with you in your grade. All right, JB, let's wrap up the defense with the DBs. Not a lot of rotation, not a lot of injuries in this group. We're basically talking about five guys here. What do you make of their play? What do you see from them?
Yeah, I mean, I did actually end up giving them the lowest grade. I gave a D to the defensive backs. They just are not getting it done. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not chaotic. We've talked about how they're always in great position, but I mean, the statistics are stark. You know, they are second to last in opponents' pass percentage and pass efficiency. They're eighth in gaining interceptions. They're seventh in pass knockdowns. They're eighth in opposition passing touchdowns. They are not, they're part of the defense as last in first downs allowed. There just simply isn't a defensive back statistic that is not last or second last. And combine that with the eye test of not being able to defend. They've given up the most plays over 30 in the league. They just are not able to defend the deep ball. They have not been great in run support tackling. The defensive backfield has been the weakest unit, I think, on the Argos.
I don't see it the same way as you do. And I think maybe the difference is the way in which we look at what I would view as intangible and what you're viewing as a missing part of their game. And I think that's getting their hands on the ball, like knocking the ball away, getting interceptions. And for me, like I feel like I don't want to burn them with a poor grade because I think the coverage is there. Like most of the time when Kenny Lawler is catching all these touchdowns, like there's a DB right there. And like to me, I would say, I know, and I totally get your point of view. It's like having like, well, they're first in the league and almost made 3-pointers. Yeah, well, that's not the same thing to me.
It's a make or don't make league. I mean, I just think I'll just say to defend. I love defensive backs, and I think watching them, but I mean the statistics are stark. I mean they don't have any significant injuries, and they just simply don't have a metric in terms of defensive backfield coverage that is any good. The only thing they have going statistically is that they are, that they're third in passing yards given up, but that's because teams are running so much on the Argos. They don't need to pass very much because they're having so much success running. If teams threw more, I think these numbers would be even worse. Teams pass against the Argos the least amount of any team. They are running on the Argos because they cannot stop the run. So I think off the defensive back statistics being so bad and also having the fewest attempts against them is not a great combination.
But I would say, to give you another analogy, there have been very few attempts. I think that's why there haven't been, well, it's also been some bad luck to not have the knockdowns and the interception numbers. As a baseball player, if you crush a ball, just absolutely rip a ball, and it just happens to go right to the third baseman, or the shortstop makes a diving catch, like you crushed the baseball. You saw it well, you had a great swing, you made great contact, it just happened to go right to the shortstop. That's not going to maintain throughout the course of a baseball season. You're not going to bat 180 all year because you keep blistering balls to a shortstop. To me, that's what I see from this defensive back play. There haven't been busts. There haven't been guys miles out of position. There haven't been communication errors. I just haven't seen that stuff. And they've been step for step with the best receivers in the league. They just haven't finished it. And for you, that's a big concern. And I get that. I'm also concerned about that. But to me, I think these are guys that have shown that. Like Benji Franklin has been victimized perhaps more than anyone else. He has always been right there when guys are making touchdown catches. And I think it's really easy to look at his play and say, yeah, Benji's given up like a ton of touchdowns this year, a ton of completed passes. But he was at the top of the league last year in knockdowns. He was an interception king to close the season last year. There's going to be a regression to the mean with his play. I don't like what I've seen in terms of the big plays and the touchdowns given up. But I'm really not overly concerned about that group positionally. I think Bratton's played pretty well. I think Sluka's played really well too. He's been a nice discovery. I think in as much plays we've seen from Tyshawn Blackburn, I think he's looked pretty good. In when they sort of add and go with that like seventh DB and a 3-man rush, I think he's looked strong. McFadden's been okay. And so I'm really not like Franklin's the only one that gets burned consistently, and I really think that's going to turn itself around.
Well, I appreciate your optimism. There's almost no empirical evidence to support it, but
there is. At some point, you stop blistering baseballs to the shortstop, and your average picks up.
Well, yes, I understand that the analytical argument of bat speed and ball velocity and so forth, but I wish I could give them a better grade, but the reality is that the first 5 weeks have been very poor.
This would be different if you were seeing guys just get out performed athletically. If guys were burning by you and we're looking at a positional group that didn't have enough speed or didn't have any ability to judge the ball in the air or didn't know their assignments, and we haven't got that. We're just inches away each time, and I do think that will correct itself. But like you say, like I get it because you shouldn't really ignore that, but I do think it's going to correct.
It reminds me a little bit, obviously not, but I once had a defense that was not very good, and I used to play a lot of man because at least my guy was close to the guy when he caught the touchdown, and so that bugged me less. So that's why I ran a lot of man.
I can't believe you're comparing that team to the Toronto Argonauts.
I'm not. It was just an unrelated anecdote.
Let's move to the special teams contributors. What did you see from the special teams play so far, and where do you grade them?
Well, yeah, the Jekyll and Hyde. Really tough to come up with a grade because you're like, great, terrible, great, terrible. I ended up giving it a B-. They are, look, Hero has been fantastic at kicking. He's been kicking deeper, longer field goals than anybody. 3 for 3 over 50. If he hasn't been great, my gosh, I think even from the eye test, he has kept them within spitting distance over and over and over again. So Hero has been fantastic. Haggerty statistically has been punting well. It hasn't been as good at kind of pinning guys at the 1 or under the 5 as you would hope. But I mean, statistically, his stuff is pretty good. But they are they're very good at kick return, but they're terrible at defending kick return. And they've had some great big plays on kick return, and they've given up huge plays on kick return. And they're good at punt return, but they're also terrible at defending it. Yeah, they're all over the place in terms of special teams. They're towards the bottom, too many penalties. So it's sort of, I don't know what to say. They're very good at creating big plays, but they're not very good at stopping big plays. And so specials have been, all over the map, which, I think speaks to the record. If the special teams could kind of coalesce a little bit better, essentially, if they can get better at kick return and punt return, then that special teams unit is elite. They need to get some guys back. But the kick return, punt return is really hurting them right now. So that is definitely something that has to improve.
And that's Kassar and Haralamana that will help that unit. I think Kassar probably coming back first will make a difference. And you talk about the importance of special teams. That was the difference in the Saskatchewan game for sure. And you could argue the Hamilton game too. With those guys on the field in both of those games, Toronto could be, in theory, a 3-win team instead of a 1-win team. So special teams do matter.
Yeah,
all right, JB,
kick return is a big deal. The kick return defense has. That absolutely. I'm not telling anything anybody doesn't know. It has to improve. You can't be last in kick return.
Let's get into our power rankings, JB. We'll go a 9 through 1. I will give you honors first. Who do you have as your worst team in the CFL right now?
So some of this is tricky because to a certain extent I factored in potential. Like I'm going on the first 5 weeks, so I'm laying it where it is, but I also factored in a little bit of terms of potential. So for me, Elks are the worst. I feel like Ottawa has some real strengths, and if they can get their quarterback back. So I'm going to put Edmonton at 9, even though they just beat Ottawa at home. It was, I wouldn't call that win resounding, but I still have Edmonton at 9.
I have Ottawa 9, Edmonton 8, and I think what I will say though is that this is a pretty competitive league. Like the teams at the bottom are perfectly fine. They're not getting blown out. They're able to play with everybody. This isn't like we've seen in years past where there are doormats. It just isn't like that. And so Ottawa, I think they're a dangerous football team. I have them 9 because they lost to Edmonton, and I have Edmonton 8 because again these are 1-win teams. Yeah. I assume Ottawa is your number 8.
They are. Ottawa gets to play in the East too. I think the East is significantly, or at least is measurably weaker than the West. So that factors in as well a little bit. Ottawa is. They lost to the Argos. They are not. They're not very good, especially without their quarterback. They're not a great team. They're not, like you said, they're not terrible, but they are not competing for the Grey Cup.
Who do you have at 7?
At 7, I have your Toronto Argonauts. We've talked, I think, ad nauseum about the return, and I look forward to having a vastly changed power ranking after the next bye. But as Bill Parcells said, you are what your record is, and the Argos are 7th for me right now.
Yeah, I can't argue that. I have them 7 as well. I think it will be very different in a few weeks' time, but I think you can't ignore a 1-4 start, and so you have to lump them into that bottom group. Why don't I go? We'll sort of snake this. I'll go to number 6 now.
Yep.
So I've got the BC Lions as my 6th team. They impressed me in that comeback win against Montreal, but remember a lot of things had to go right for that to happen, and they did, and you give them credit for that. But I think 9 times out of 10, that's a Montreal win, a BC loss, and you're left looking at the BC Lions and saying, why does this team only have 1 win? And they would be 1-4 as well. So I think there are just a few lucky breaks, an explosive offensive lineman getting a penalty on an extra point, and that was the difference in the game. And so I don't think I can put them comfortably higher than 6. I actually think Toronto has looked better than them most of the time, but I want to give BC credit for that win over the Alouettes. Yeah,
I found this really hard actually. I have like 5 teams that can interchange with each other.
Same.
I actually have Montreal here
Hmm.
at 6. I'm not sure what's going on with their quarterback. They look fantastic in week 1, but in fairness, they beat the Argonauts. I'm still waiting for Montreal's kind of a 0.2 win, like where you can say, they went into Winnipeg and beat them, or they beat Saskatchewan. I haven't seen that yet. So I have Montreal there at 6.
They, I think, have looked really good at times, but I think what you're starting to see now is, I said this after the first week of the season, like they were going to look much better than everybody in week 1 because they had largely the whole group back together again. And
I mean,
now,
they've only beaten Edmonton, Ottawa, and Toronto.
right. And they have started to show signs of trouble against BC and against Hamilton, and that's because the rest of the league is sort of catching up, and that was inevitable. I have them higher still, so you've got Montreal at your 6.
I got Montreal at 6. Yeah.
So who's your 5th team?
Hamilton.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I think Hamilton
fine.
has real potential.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Bo Levi is playing at an MVP level.
Well, last week he was.
I mean, people do that when they play Toronto. But if you look at them, like, they're pretty well. I mean, obviously, I've always been a huge fan of Lawler. I think offensively they have the potential to put up 30, which is, I think, the sign of a team that can win the Grey Cup. Defensively, I love their physicality. I think Hamilton has the potential to be good. I've liked Hamilton, and they beat Montreal.
I have Hamilton at 5 as well, and then I have Calgary at 4, who I think have exceeded most people's expectations. I actually thought they would be a decent team, and they look about like what I thought they'd be. I thought we'd get better numbers from Vernon Adams, but I think he's played okay, especially considering they're missing Reggie Begelton. I think this team has looked pretty good, and they've played tough in their own building. So, I have Calgary as my number 4 team. Who do you have at 4?
Well, my top 4 are all Western teams, obviously. I have BC at 4, but I went back and forth a lot on this. Look, BC's lost to Winnipeg twice. So that's sort of skewed things a little bit. And obviously Rourke has been banged up. I think BC has the potential to be quite good, that like really improve. So I certainly have them above anybody in the East, but they don't have the Calgary win that they just did, to kind of spoiler, but I have Calgary at 3 with that Winnipeg beatdown. I mean, one of the things I really look for is opponent, and do you have a kind of a win that you can put on the mantle? And, the teams sort of 6 and down don't. They just kind of beat up on the lower teams. And I think that Calgary win has to put them 3rd. I mean, that was really impressive.
I have Montreal 3rd, and the reason I have them as high as that is from
if you don't listen.
Well, no, because
empirical evidence doesn't mean anything to you.
Well, their 2 losses are with their backup quarterback, so they're 3-0 with their starting quarterback, and their starting quarterback has never lost a game.
Well, they're 3-0 against the 7th, 8th, and 9th team.
I know it works out that way, but they crushed them. These weren't close games, and when Davis Alexander comes back, there's nothing that they've done that leads me to believe they'll continue to struggle. They have lost when their backup quarterback's in, and I think most teams do that. Yeah, so I have them at 3. For number 2, I have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who I think have looked great, but then they had that loss to Calgary, so I had to step them back a little bit.
Yeah, I actually almost had Calgary at 2. Winnipeg kind of grandfathers in. Because they're always great. So I have Winnipeg at 2, but I thought Calgary, Calgary's defensive statistics are elite, and everyone knows that the defense will travel like that. Their defensive numbers are really off the charts good, and so I think Calgary is going to be a problem.
Yeah, and Winnipeg, they're actually similar in some ways. I don't know the last time we've been able to say that is, but they sort of play a little bit like each other.
It would not surprise me if Calgary was number one next time I did this.
Interesting. That would surprise me. I don't foresee that, but I'm excited about that possibility. It's different. Like I'm excited about there being some difference in the West. Someone other than Winnipeg coming out of the West, I think would be a cause for celebration for fans of the CFL. Nothing against Winnipeg. It's been the same for a long time. So we both have Saskatchewan at 1. They just they've had a couple of close calls in Toronto especially, but. They've looked good. They've done everything. They've found a way to win football games. I think they also have been really banged up to be 4-0 and to have the number of injuries that they have had. Not a quarterback really, well, to the same extent that some other teams have had. And so that's been fortunate. But yeah, they've had O-line issues, injured receiving core, and they've still managed to win football games.
Yeah, I mean, I also have Sask at 1. But it is really interesting, they have not played Calgary and they have not played Winnipeg. So the West has not really played each other. So I think the next couple of weeks going to be really interesting because, we'll see if Sask is a paper tiger or not because, let's see how they match. They've been able to feast on the East, but how will they match up with Calgary and Winnipeg? I'm really curious to see. But for now, I do have them 1.
It is time for Put Me Down for 20. JB, before we get into our picks, I just want to remind the listeners not to take any of our picks seriously. We don't. We are betting fictional golden fleeces, and so you should not bet your hard-earned money on anything we say. And if you choose to make wagers, make sure it is what you can afford to lose as the cost of entertainment. All right, JB. Last week we were pretty much even. I went up half a golden fleece.
I was half a yard away.
Yes, your Dejan Brissett plus 320 touchdown did not come in.
He was right there. That was really frustrating.
But you won on Elks first half, and I won on Elks on the money line, and I lost my Devaris Daniels first half touchdown at plus 380. I'm going to give you honors this week. Where are you going with your 20 fleeces? We don't have a required Argos bet, being a bye week. So however you want to divide this up.
Yeah, I'll go 10 and 10 again. So I'm going to go some over-unders. I'm going to go under 45.5 for the Calgary-Saskatchewan game. I love Calgary's defense. I think that they are going to really put it to. I think Saskatchewan is going to be a big jump for them in terms of who they played. So I like the under there at plus 215, under 45.5.
You moved that way down, eh? That's bold.
Yeah, I think Calgary's defense is that good, so I'm putting it all on that. And then on the flip side, my Elks, I have BC and Edmonton over 59.5. I think that these two teams are just going to try and outscore each other, plus 240.
I find like setting your own lines is like always death. I find like every time I've done that, it looks so tempting, and yet I've gone and done one of those myself.
It's true. They do know what they're doing when they set lines. It is a bit of a sucker's bet, but I don't care. For mine, my first 10 fleeces, I've set my own Drew Brown passing yards number at 350. And I'm getting plus 200 for that. He's been over 400 so many times in his young career. And so I think that Hamilton defense will give you yards. So I have Drew Brown over to 350 passing yards for plus 200. And then the other one, it's going to be an Argos bet, even though it is the bye week. I love the number. Argos to win the Grey Cup right now is plus 900. There are only a couple of teams worse. That's because of the record. They're 1-4, but there's only 9 teams in the league. So you're basically getting the same odds as like every other team. And it's a team that, as we've documented, is getting all these pieces back. So you give me Chad Kelly, Wyndham McManus, DeMonte Coxey, and Coach Ryan Dinwiddie, and 9-1 odds in a 9-team league. I think that is great value. So that's where 10 of my fleeces are going, a long-term bet.
All right, JB, let's finish it up with challenge flag. Last week, you got the win, and you are now beating me 3-2. You chose Hamilton over Toronto. I thought the Argos were going to pull it out. They didn't, and so you moved to 11-9 on the year straight up and 3-2 against me. So let's get into this week's picks. Calgary at Saskatchewan. What's your pick?
I'm going to go with my Calgary pick here. I think they're going to go in and surprise the Rough Riders. I'm going to take Calgary there.
Okay. Second is Ottawa at Hamilton. I'm interested in this one.
You know what? I know this is probably too. You know what? No, I almost did, but I'm not taking the all caps. It would be very Hamilton to lose this game after beating the Argos, but I'm going to take Hamilton at home.
And then the last game of the week, the Sunday game, BC at Edmonton. These are tough.
I'm going to hope that Rourke is good to go there, and I'm going to go BC Lions.
Okay, this is a tough one for me. I could see going against any of these three. I actually agree with you on the picks, but only just. I think I'm going to, just for the entertainment of having you swear about it, as I get texts from you, I think I'm going to take the Ottawa Redblacks to beat Hamilton, because I know that will grind your gears when they do. So that's my challenge flag. I am throwing the challenge flag on your Hamilton pick. Well, that will just about do it for us on this bye-week episode of the Xs and Argos podcast. Enjoy the bye-week, fans. Argos are coming back with a heavy schedule that includes games at Montreal and then a couple games coming up in quick succession against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It doesn't get easier, but reinforcements might make it feel like it has gotten a little easier. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll be back with you mid next week to do our pregame walkthrough episode of the Toronto Argonauts' visit to the Montreal Alouettes. That'll do it for us. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe.